Welcome to the class. After a wee bit of a technical difficulty, we're going to get started now. So I am Dr. John Harmon. I'm founder of Clear Center of Idaho. We're located right inside of the Karlfeldt Center. And that just might not work tonight. This is going bye-bye. That's probably what shorted it out. So left brain, right brain. Tonight we're going to answer some questions. So what does it mean? Right brain, left brain? Does it have to do with being a jock or a geek or a nerd? What is that? How does it affect you? How does it affect your child? Little introduction, I already told you who I was, but just so you know, whether you go to med school or you go to chiropractic college, you don't learn how to read EEGs. You don't learn how to do neurofeedback. So in order to do that, whether you are an MD or a DC, you have to go get certified, which I did. So I went to the international board and went through their rigorous training and got certified in neurofeedback. It's called BCIA, Biofeedback Certification International Alliance, but it encompasses neurofeedback and biofeedback. I am father of 8 and grandfather of 21.
Congratulations.
Do you feel my pain? That's actually wonderful. We get to go Friday and watch my identical twin granddaughters be in a musical, the Frozen. One's Anna and one's Elsa, because they're twins. It's going to be great. What is our passion? What are we about? We are passionate about helping people get their true self back. If you think about that for a minute, my true self. Does my true self include anxiety? Because I have that. Does it include OCD? Because I have that. Or depression? No, it really doesn't. You're going to find out tonight that it's just those little dimmer switches in your brain all over the place. There's 2,400 of them. There's either too much or too little of something somewhere that's causing those symptoms. And that's what we do here. We look at that. Come on in.
Thank you.
We had a technical difficulty and we just got started, so you're good.
Wonderful.
I know there's always a time and a place for technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We help people get their true self back. And I'll explain a little bit about each one of these. Here is, or how we do that. My contact information, if you want to take a shot or something, not a shot, a screenshot. Email is drjohn, that's Jon, at clearmindidaho.com. The website, clearmindidaho.com. And Facebook is Clear Mind Center of Idaho. So, before we start, I want to find out who I'm dealing with tonight. So we're going to do a little, it's just a brief, I don't want to call it a game, but it'll help you discover a little bit about yourself. It's really brief. Come on in. And I want you to think for just maybe 10 seconds. Where is my sense of self located? If I were to ponder and close my eyes, where do I feel my sense of self? And those people just checking in, I want you to do this as well. So where does it reside inside of me? Where do I feel it? So I want you to close your eyes, and no cheating. That's how I'm going to find out who I'm dealing with. Close your eyes and just ponder that for a couple of seconds. And then I want you to point to it. Point to that spot when you're ready, when you feel like you know where my sense of self is, and then just hold your finger there, and then I'll tell you when everybody's ready. Okay, got a couple more people. Sense of self. Okay. Open your eyes, but don't put your hand down. You're either going to point here or here. These are more right brain people, and these are more left brain people. And you're going to find out why in just a little bit. But I thought that's really interesting. And when I first took the course to get this information that I'm sharing with you tonight, the instructor is a chiropractor. It was a functional neurology course. And he said, chiropractors tend to be more right brain because we have to engage with people a lot more, you know, and hands-on. And medical doctors are more left brain. And they don't have to be nice. I'm just kidding. Come in, I'm booked up for 3 months anyway, so we did the point to the spot. So are you more left brain or right brain? I'm here to tell you everything that happens in the brain is processed on both sides. It's just that it's different parts of it. So you might process, like the left brain thinks of the body as a collection of individual parts. The right brain just sees it as a whole. But it sees our body. A bird pecking at little grains of something has to be fine detail, but he also has to pay attention for predators. So that's the big picture. That's left brain, right brain stuff. So you either pointed, I'm a little bit behind. So left brain, head, right brain, heart. But now I know who I'm dealing with. I have a lot of right brain stuff too, playing instruments and things when I was younger. Okay, after seeing the next few slides, you will never look at anybody the same way again. I guarantee it's going to change forever what you look at when you're looking at somebody and how you look at them. And I want you to look at this picture right here. And I want you to just look at him and look at maybe some asymmetries that you see in this guy's face. Who wants to point out the first one?
I smile.
In the back.
The eye.
The eye. This one's a lot more open. This one is a lot narrower. And somebody said smile? Mm-hmm. So this laugh line is a lot more prominent. This one is shallow. And if he were to raise his eyebrows up, we'd see that the wrinkles are not as prominent on this side. This guy has a weakness in his right brain. His right brain is going slower than his left. How about this gal? These aren't as, she doesn't have any facial expressions, but you can see a little bit more below this eye. That eye is bigger. And here's a drawing that can really show you what I'm talking about. It's called scleral show. The sclera is the white of the eye. And these are things that I look at when somebody comes in our hemispheric exam. I have to know, is one side of the brain going faster than the other? I'm going to talk about oscillation rate. That just means how many impulses per second your cells are getting on one side compared to the other. And you have to look at it like, there's a guy in this side of my brain playing a video game, and there's a guy in this side. He who pushes the button the fastest wins. Whoops. So there are different things that happen in the right brain compared to the left brain. A little bit about what I do here. I mentioned that hemispheric exam. So I put together a way to help fix brains. And it was motivated by some really tragic things that happened in my own family. We had, in a 1-year period of time, and Erica knew me when this went on, but in March of 2010, we had my 18-year-old niece committed suicide. March of 2011, my oldest daughter's husband was murdered. My younger kids had anxiety, insomnia, and depression. I had anxiety-induced insomnia. Every night between 1:50 and 2:10, I would wake up and my heart was pounding. 4 trips to the emergency room. Mr. Harmon, your heart looks good. Your veins are good. Your blood works good. Your cardiac enzymes are good. $3,500 out the door. Nobody ever told me anything. And when 3 years of drugs and surgery weren't working, I said, I'm going to find things that fix brains. And then I helped my own family get better, get over those things, through those things. But that has led me to this spot. With Claremont Center of Idaho, brain assessment, we're going to drill into this just a little bit on what that involves. Brain mapping, neurofeedback, and cold laser therapy. Most people, when you hear laser, the word laser, you think, oh, it burns, or it's a totally different concept of what lasers do. So what is a brain assessment? That is that hemispheric dominance. We have to find out which side is going faster than the other, meaning the other side is going slower, obviously. Primitive reflexes. By show of hands, how many people have heard of primitive reflexes? 2 people. You don't count. You already know. So 2 people, that's the most that I've ever found in a group who have actually heard of primitive reflexes. These are things we're born with to help us survive. We don't know how to eat. Something touches our cheek, the baby latches on. That's where I get nourishment. But there are 10 prominent ones that we can actually take action on and get them to, I don't want to say go away, but remediate them and get the higher part of the brain to take over like it should have. Because if you have some of these, you could have chronic anxiety your entire life if you just have one of them. Or balance problems, or ADHD, or messy eater, or toe walker, or motion sickness, stuttering. All kinds of things are caused by these retained primitive reflexes. Isn't that crazy? Nobody ever talks about it. So, we do an exam. Today, I did an exam on a probably mid-20s, chronic anxiety, and I have a way of making the startle response go away. So as I was doing it, he took me, I said, your heart rate changed, didn't it? He said, how did you know? Because it was sitting there like this. But so I just wanted to kind of plant that seed about primitive reflexes. I'll mention them a little bit later, and if we have time, I'll even get some people up and test them, if we have enough time for that. Autonomic imbalances, autonomic nervous system, fight or flight, rest, digest. Most of us operate here all day. We're go, go, go. Don't even take time to digest our food. 15 minutes, let's go. We really need to give that more time so they can be out of balance. And if the fight or flight is active, it can lead to digestion problems. It can lead to chronic anxiety and eventually a lot of other things. Muscle and core strength. Why is that important? Because floppy muscles, floppy brain. Strong muscles, strong brain. The muscles drive brain development, actually send electrical impulses to your brain that sets, remember when I said oscillation rate? It sets the oscillation rate of your brain. In other words, the number of times per second it's firing. And we'll see how that can kind of get off a little bit. Okay, so I already mentioned this. Brain mapping, what is that? Well, the technical term's called the quantitative EEG. And now you know why we just call it a brain map. It's a lot easier, and it doesn't, it's not so hard to say. So this little guy was having seizures. We can do it on any age, as long as they can sit still for up to 1 minute at a time. We can do it on anybody. This guy, actually, his parents brought him in to me when I had my chiropractic practice, and said, he seems really clumsy lately. He's fallen a lot. I think he hurt his back. So I had him stand up, and so anyway, he had a brain tumor, had that removed, and then this transition happened with me. Then we got to fix his brain and help it regulate itself after the tumor was removed. It was really rewarding, needless to say. Neurofeedback, what is that? Neurofeedback retrains the brain to learn how to regulate itself. Drugs change brain waves, but they change brain waves the same in everybody who takes them. The difference in how it affects somebody is determined by what's already high and what's already low. Zoloft, for example, raises one type of your brainwave forms, but lowers, did I get it? Are we on? I think I stepped on the cord, but it's back.
Okay.
Raises one, but lowers the rest of them. So what if you already have one that's low of these? Here's how the conversation sounds. I'm sorry, you have suicidal thoughts now, we'll have to try something else. So the difference is the brain map looks at the electrical regulation in your brain, and then the neurofeedback trains down what needs to go down and up what needs to go up. Remember those little dimmer switches I was talking about? Okay. Okay, if this one needs a little more light, you turn it up. If this one needs a little less, it turns it down. It's pretty much how it does it. Here's what it looks like. This is actually my oldest son, Josh. I did it again. Doing neurofeedback, and you see that screen right there. I'm going to show you. You'll see there's all of the brain waves on this one are being measured. On this next screen, only 2 of them were. That's why it looks different. But I wanted to show this to you. This is how it works. This is the screen we see when somebody's doing neurofeedback. You don't have to know everything, but I want to point something out. See that up there, the top one? 62.5. 58.9. That's measuring this person's delta waves. You know how much they're supposed to be? 11. Delta is associated with sleep. What do you think this person thinks or feels like with the delta waves at 62? She feels half asleep. I feel foggy brain. Associated with brainstem, cerebellum, and sleep. This is 31. It should be about 10. And these 19, that should be about 9, and this should be 6. But I point that out, and I want you to see how almost exactly this one is to this side. The right and the left brain are supposed to have a little independence and work a little bit differently. This one is stuck processing the same information. These are things we look at. 18.8, this is a measurement of ADD. It should be 6.0 or below. Okay, that was January 4th. This is February 3rd. This is down to 21, 14, 8, 6. Starting to see just a little tiny bit of differences in the way the brain's working right to left. This is down to 7.5. Remember I said it should be about 6. And this is February 7th. We're starting to get, left brain is, doing its own thing a little bit. Kind of the same, but different. But this is 12. That's still 21 on that side, but this is over about a little bit more than a month. But that's how it works. That's neurofeedback. The sensors are on the parts of the brain we're training. The system is sensing when it's doing the right thing. It rewards the brain for doing the right thing by letting them see the movie and hear the sound, and then dims it when it's out of range. Said, nope, that's the old pattern. We don't do that anymore. Okay, we do that, not this. More of this, less of that, more of that. That's how it works. Cold laser. Photobiomodulation is another name you'll hear. This is what one of our lasers looks like. There are 3 diodes, and it's like hands of a clock, and they're spinning like this. Here's another view with another laser set up back in one of my main rooms back there. Where does this come from? Just like Einstein theorized in the early 1900s about the photoelectric effect. Photons that hit biological tissue will increase electrons. That's why we eat food. When Mom said eat your vegetables, what she really meant to say is eat your vegetables because they have a lot of electron donors in them. And you get more electrons. So Einstein said the photoelectric effect would cause more electrons to be produced. He was right. The difference between white light, which has all colors of light and it just looks white, LED, still scattered, laser, all of the wavelengths are doing the same thing at the same time. So you get depth of penetration and you get the effect on the cells, and I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to read this one little thing right here. This is from Harvard. I'm sure we've heard of that. Hamblin is the main researcher. The almost complete lack of any adverse side effects of photobiomodulation, coupled with the growing disillusion with pharmaceutical drugs that affect brain function, have combined together to suggest an alternative physical therapy approach to improving brain function. That's photobiomodulation. And here's why they work. Don't want to get all physics, geeking out on physics here, but pH and electric charge are inseparable in a cell. Normal cells, minus 25 microvolts. You don't really have to know much about that, except the minus stands for there's lots of electrons available for work. We get electrons and we perform or do something. Normal for adults, 7.44 pH in the cell. If you have a lot of electron stealers, you will have down here a plus charge, and the cells are acidic. This is where cancer grows. When our cells are acidic, they cannot grow when they're alkaline. Our cells are minus 25, kids are up minus 35. At minus 50 is where we make new cells and regenerate and heal. The laser takes it up to minus 50 when it hits the cell. That's why they heal. That's why it increases healing. That's why we get regeneration. That's why in this book that I'm going to show you, The Brain's Way of Healing, they've talked about how they've restored hearing and vision by using cold laser on the brain. Brain effect has been demonstrated to improve autistic symptoms, behavior, shown to reduce viral replication and improve immune response, activates or inhibits brain network firing, has an effect on functional connectivity, we're going to talk about that, via use of frequencies, pulsations of light, can rapidly reduce or eliminate primitive reflexes that I talked about. This book right here was the stimulus for the epiphany that I had. Chapter 4, it's called The Brain's Way of Healing, Dr. Norman Doidge. The book looks like this. Very, very good book. We have actually some excerpts from that if you want one. Get one before you leave it up on the counter. There is no more important topic or issue affecting our country and the health of the world and what's going on in the brains of our kids. Has anybody else noticed it? My goodness. We've got 20% of kids are dyslexic. The estimated autism prevalence in 2018, 1 in 59. ADHD kids, about 6.4 million of them in our country have ADHD. And I put this next slide in, I found it on the internet, and I wanted to show it to you because it's partially true. Inattention, difficulty giving attention to details, and I'll have moms tell me their ADHD kid, what are you talking about? He can play a video game for 5 hours straight. He can pay attention. Let me tell you where that comes from. There are 5 types of attention. Only one of them is on the left side. It's short-term rewards-based attention. What is that? It's a video game. I push a button, somebody dies, or I hit something, or something like this. That's short-term attention. But what if you have to sit in class for 3 hours and watch the boring, no, I'm sorry if anybody's a teacher, but to kids they're boring. And sit there and watch and try to listen. The other forms of attention are vigilance, sustained attention, alertness, and divided attention. All of those come from the right side of the brain. Only one from the left, short term. But this describes symptoms of ADHD. We're going to focus on ADHD tonight. I'm still going to mention dyslexia and some other things, but just for lack of time, we're going to focus on ADHD. It's so prevalent. I only have a couple of slides that I'm going to read because this is really important. It's the leading childhood disorder of any kind in the world. According to CDC in 2010, affects 1 in 10 children. National Institute of Mental Health noted in 2010, ADHD is the most prevalent mental disorder among the youth. Number one reason why a child is medicated, diagnosis and production of medicine has increased 2,000% over the past 2 decades. Almost 70% of children with ADHD have at least one other diagnosis, and most have at least 3 labels. ADHD lifelong impact. ADHD teenagers have 32% high school dropout rate, as opposed to 15% for typical children. 70 to 80% of families with ADHD kids end up in divorce. 300% increase in the risk of substance abuse. 300% increase of dementia, risk of dementia. Average ADHD family spends $15,000. Autistic families spend $30,000 annually to maintain the problem. Special ed child cost the community extra 60 to 80 grand per child per year. How are we going to sustain that? It is my goal, and it is our passion to make a difference in that, in this community. And we are making a difference in this community because we know what causes it, and it's not something I made up. There's a lot of backing up. I want to point out one thing right here. Annual costs range between 42.5 and 36 billion in 2005 dollars, and then in 2017, 124 billion just to maintain the problem. Okay, now we're going to get into some cool stuff. They did studies on 223 kids with ADHD and compared them to 223 kids who don't have ADHD. What did they do? They took 4,000 measurements of cortical thickness of the brain. 4,000, all around the brain. What they found, there was a marked delay in ADHD individuals in attaining peak thickness throughout most of the cerebrum. The median age by which 50% of the cortical points attained peak thickness for this group was 10.5 years. Normal is 7.5 years. So by age 7.5, our brain should be 50% mature. But ADHD kids, it's at 10.5. So they could be 3 grades behind. But you're going to find out in a minute, 3 grades behind in some things, but since it mostly affects the right side of the brain, the left side takes off and they may be 3 grades ahead in other things. That's why they're so smart. ADHD kids, my kid's really smart. I don't think he has a problem because he can do this math. The teacher says that he can do this math computation. He's working at a 10th grader level, but he's 6 grades lower than that. He's in the 4th grade, but he's not in the 4th grade, he's in the 7th grade, but he's acting like a 4th grader. How does that work out? You know, very immature, socially inappropriate, and you know, usually parents are going like that. But this is what it looks like. This is where most of the slowing was, the problem was. The prefrontal cortex, back in here, and without getting into details about it, that has a lot to do with attention, decision making, and those types of things. Then here's where I think medicine is really missing the boat. Unevenness of skills. You have to look at the 2 hemispheres as kind of like racehorses. And one goes faster, the other one wants to catch up with it. But each side inhibits the other side from getting too far ahead. How does it do that? Well, normally the brain will use the part of the brain that's best suited for that. But much like an impatient parent, if it takes too long, the other side's going to take over. Just let me do that. Get out of the way. It takes longer to teach a kid how to vacuum the floor than it does to vacuum the entire house. Trust me, I know. I have 8, remember? So what happens, you get this unevenness of skill, not only because of that, but because if one side is delayed and the other side has accelerated, you have this situation where you're doing things at this level and the other level that I mentioned. Unevenness of skills is representative of different physical and functional connectivity in different networks. There is no damage, there is a maturational imbalance. You don't have brain damage, but just one side is a lot less mature than the other. The difference is a result of different maturation level. I read that. Most parents and siblings do not have a diagnosis. Just as an orchestra can be divided into groups of instruments from different families, the brain can be separated into collections of nodes called modules, a description of localized networks. Put simply, your thoughts, feelings, quirks, flaws, and mental strength are all encoded by the specific organization of the brain as a unified integrated network. In sum, it is the music your brain plays that makes you you. The music of the brain thus becomes increasingly unbalanced, with one family of instruments governing the symphony. This is my favorite slide. looks like a bunch of cotton candy or something. Each one of these little dots is a hub or a node. The brain has to be able, these nodes have to be able to talk to each other. Sometimes, like a dysfunctional couple, they stop talking. They're just shut off. And all we have to do is reconnect them and get them talking to each other. Oh, now little Johnny can do that. Now his eye works. Or now he doesn't stutter. Or this or that. So this names them all out and shows the color. I'll just read a few. Word generation out loud. That's this color, pinkish, over here. And free word list recall, writing, pointing, visual control. We know where all that stuff comes from, and you can test it. One little thing here, and then I'm pretty much done reading, I promise. Toddlers with autism exhibited significantly weaker interhemispheric synchronization. The strength of the synchronization was positively correlated with verbal activity and negatively correlated with autism severity. And it enabled identification of the majority of autistic toddlers with high accuracy. Disrupted cortical synchronization, therefore, appears to be a notable characteristic of autism. And the reason I'm saying autism, because it's a worse problem than ADHD, but they both have the right brain is the weak part. So what is happening? What's happening in the mind of these kids? Well, let's ask, and adults, let's ask the neuroscience of psychotherapy in 2010. When one or more neural networks necessary for optimal functioning remain undeveloped, underdeveloped, or underintegrated, we experience the complaints and symptoms for which people seek therapy. All conditions that adversely affect behavior and learning are actually related to one problem: an imbalance of electrical activity between areas of the brain, especially the right and the left hemisphere. So let's say that it's supposed to look like that when you're processing some information, but it looks like that. You can't do it. You can't process it. So we have to briefly talk about the brain and how it develops in order to understand this concept of what I'm going to speak. How and why do things go wrong? What causes these faulty networks? That's what we all want to know anyway, right? Okay, there's a lot wrapped up into this slide, but we're going to be on this slide for a little bit. Most people have not heard of parvocellular or magnocellular. The first 2 to 3 years of life, after the baby is born, there's an explosion of information coming in, light and sound and people and moms speak, "Oh, you look so cute." That happens in every culture and every language. Moms are trying to teach their baby how to enunciate and talk and facial expressions, and that's actually really, really good for the baby. But the baby is just eating and staring up at everything. They don't have to learn how to do math or walk or do any of those things. That's when this comes in. These are on the right side of the brain. The magnocellular, big picture, facial expressions, outline of stuff, big stuff, but also muscle movement. So the baby, one of the primitive reflexes is the grasp reflex. Why do they have it? So they can pull themselves up and start developing their core strength and their muscles and then eventually stand up. So the magnocellulars come online first. Yes, the left side of the brain's still there, but it's not. It needs to remain pretty much dormant for the first 2 to 3 years of life. A lot of parents think it's their badge of honor if their kid walks at 8 months. It's activating this side of the brain. This is wrong thinking, because you're cheating the right side of the brain that needs to have that time to develop and come online and learn facial expressions, learn how to live in this world, learn how to pull myself up and crawl and push myself up like this, not sitting in a container as a babysitter or a Johnny jump up. It's very important for for the entire body to feel the gravity and the weight of that. And he's developing muscle control. If they're in a container or something that's holding them up, they're not. This side of the brain does not develop. And then we give them a tablet, which activates the left side of the brain, the parvo receptors. And now what we've done is we set that kid up for a left strong brain and a weak right brain, which is ADHD and autism. I mean, I just oversimplified it and told it to you in a couple of paragraphs. But here's how it goes. The right side of the brain comes online. It's learning all these things. How do I live in my world? How do I read facial expressions? Have you ever noticed an autistic kid won't even look at your eyes? They never learned how to read eye expressions. They're watching your lips because they're moving. Because it's fine detail left side of the brain. Then in about second 2 to 3 years, the left side of the brain comes on. And now we have more of a balanced brain. Left side parvo, right side magno. And then here is, I have these in my office. I have a bigger printed one that I can show on the slide. But the right side, big picture, doing, nonverbal communication, implicit memory, large muscle controls, reading comprehension, math reasoning, auditory processing of low frequency sound, visual processing, high frequency vision, unconscious actions, memory, learning, tactile processing, deep touch, understanding abstract concept. This tactile processing, deep touch, that's why they like weighted blankets. Because they can feel deep, they can't feel very good on the outside. Light touch. So we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail. I have another one right here. I want to point this one thing out to you. This is so huge. Once you understand this, you're going to understand more about really what causes health issues. Connected to body, this is the right side of the brain, connected to body, digestion, and autonomic regulation. Left side of the brain, unconnected to body, digestion, and autonomic regulation. So what is autonomic regulation? That's rest, digest, heal, or fight or flight. So if somebody isn't resting and digesting, what are they going to have? They're going to have gut issues. Where did the gut issues start? Well, Johnny had eczema when he was 3 years old, and he's always had reflux, and he'd spit up a lot. So that kid had problems from birth. It wasn't because of a gut issue that came from taking antibiotics or something like that. Okay, so the other thing, suppresses immunity. The right side of the brain is the brakes of the immune system. The left side of the brain is the gas of the immune system. So what does that mean? If I can't put the brakes on my immune system, what will it eventually lead to? Who, me? Because your immune cells are going around and say, this is the thyroid. Hey, you look kind of nice. I think I'll kill you. Because that's what the immune system does. It kills stuff. So if you don't have the brakes, you are going to eventually develop autoimmune diseases. But it shows up as food sensitivities, food allergies, sensitive to everything. Because I don't have the brakes in my immune system. This one's a little bit bigger. You can see things better. I actually have these, that if you want a copy of them. This is like, a little bit of it is outdated, and I don't want you to think that both sides of the brain aren't working at the same time. They are. If I'm doing a math problem, part of it I have to read and understand the math reasoning on the right side, but the calculations I'm doing on the left side of the brain. I might see something that's moving, and part of my brain seeing the side-to-side moving, the other side seeing the up-to-down, or the fine detail. All right, so let's talk about some low. Okay, just a little bit of review. We've screamed up through right side weakness, and we went through the first 4 years of life of embryological, or not embryological. We didn't go that. Sometimes I do that, but development to a toddler, and past that and beyond that. So now, let's assume that somebody has a right brain weakness. And what does that look like? The right eye's open, bigger. They have a shallower laugh line. The wrinkles on that side aren't as deep. You look at them, they may be looking at you like this. Their head is tilted to the right. I didn't mention that yet. Usually, when you look at kids, their head is tilted to the right if they have a right brain weakness, and it has more to do with the left side muscles being weak because the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. The right side of the brain controls the right side of the face. With me?
Yeah.
If
It's painful.
Yes, it's painful. It's painful. So the left cerebellum controls the left side of the body. So if the left cerebellum is weak, the tone isn't as good on this side. Therefore, my head is tilting to the right. You with me? Let's have a scoliosis or something, or malformed vertebrae. So let's go through some of these. Poor long-term sustained attention. Poor nonverbal communication. Misses the big picture. You tell them a story with a metaphor in it, not going to get it. Not going to get it. They'll look at you like you're crazy. Doesn't hear the tone of voice. Explains a lot. Johnny, I told you to stop that. What? Can't inhibit thoughts, actions, and emotion. Poor balance and spatial skills. Can't control movement of eyes well. Lacks motivation and persistent. Gives up easily. Doesn't feel body. Can't connect with emotions in self and others. So if they can't feel their own body, they're sure as hell not going to have empathy for somebody. They're not going to feel what they're feeling. Did you know when you go up to somebody for a split second, you mimic their facial expressions? You know why? Because our facial expressions are tied to our emotions, and we got to see who we're dealing with. So if somebody's sad, we go, well, that person kind of sad. So you know, that's what we learn in those first 2-3 years of life. It's what we're supposed to. Because baby smiles when we smile, not because we're smiling. They're just mirroring. And when they smile, they connect it with the thought, wow, I feel happy. So they connect the smile with happiness. And the same is true for frowning and all those other things. So we mimic those. So they can't feel that. They can't connect with emotions in their self or others. Can't inhibit their immune system. Can't inhibit stress response. Because the left brain is tied into the sympathetic nervous system. Ramp it up. Can't decrease cortisol. Can't lower blood sugar. Can't inhibit and lower blood pressure. Sudden tachycardia. I mean, we can go on and on. I can print these out. Picky eater. Poor ear sensitivity. Poor smell and taste perception. Poor eye tracking. Head tilt to the right. I already said that. Okay, let's talk about high left. If you got a slow right and a high left, obsessive, compulsive, impulsive, addictive, tics, vocal tics or outbursts, mania, angry outbursts, overly focused on detail, hyperimmune system, environmental allergies, sensitivities, food allergies, hypersensitive to sound, touch, increased blood pressure, increased cortisol and fight or flight, can hear things not there, can smell things not there, can't sleep, anxious, increased short-term attention. Does that resonate with anybody that you might know? Okay. Right hemisphere dysfunction in subjects. I'm going to read the last one. Our results seem to be consistent with right hemisphere dysfunction, especially in subjects with attention deficit disorder without hyperactivity. Additionally, they're designed with the highest discriminant power to differentiate between controlled subjects with attention deficit disorder without hyperactivity and subjects with attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. So the title is Right Hemisphere Dysfunction in Subject with Attention Deficit Disorder with and without Hyperactivity Disorder. There's another study. This one, selective literature view and detailed neuropsychological case studies. This paper reviews a growing literature suggesting differential involvement of right hemisphere mechanisms specialized for behavioral regulation and attention. Supportive data are drawn from neuropsychology, neuroanatomy, and neurochemistry. In addition, 3 cases presented that illustrate the complex role of the right hemisphere dysfunction in adult manifestations of ADHD. So there's a lot of evidence coming out that we know what causes this stuff, and there isn't damage initially in the brain. The sooner that you catch these things, the sooner that you can prevent that. Because remember, we talked about ADHD kids have 30% increase in dementia. So what happens? The brain's not firing right, so then it starts to dysfunction. Right hemisphere brain morphology, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder subtype, and social comprehension. That's another study. So you might be asking yourself, what can I do at home to help the kids? Now, I haven't diagnosed anybody. I don't know your kids. I don't know you. But what I do know, if you can get their brain synchronized better, in other words, both sides of the brain firing at the same rate. The rate is supposed to be about 40 pulses per second. And you have to think of that as somebody's knocking on the neurons in your brain. Hey, wake up. Hey, I need some attention. I need you to do something. 40 times a second. Let's say the left side's going 40 and the right side's going 25. You can't even do things to coordinate side to side, like skipping sometimes. You can't process. Remember, both sides of the brain are working no matter what you're thinking or doing. So if one side's doing it a lot slower, almost everything seems to be bad except those things that only happen or mostly happen on one side, like short-term attention, rewards-based. So I want to show you something, and can you go back to my room and grab my phone? Anybody who's interested, if you have an iPhone, you can download Metro Timer. If you have an Android app, you can download, I use one called Soundbrenner, Brenner. And metronome timing, find it? Metronome timing and synchronizing the brain is really getting a lot of attention. Attention, there's that word. So start your kids out. And I just have the app right here. Start the kids out, eyes closed, 72 beats a minute. The slower you go, the more off they're going to be if they have ADHD. And you will see it. So doing it like this, it's not applauding, it's not, it's even time, out and in, like this. Eyes closed, whole hand, using the more of the arm you use, the more you send those impulses at the same time up to the brain. Another thing you can do is circles, tapping on the thighs like this. Once they get good at that, you can move on to other stuff, but you need to, the metronome timer, and watch them do it every day. You got to be really, really consistent in order to make any changes. You can't make them overnight. But what happens, you'll notice after a few days of doing it, they may get off, but they can get right back on. I've taken people, like even older people who have dementia or Alzheimer's, and they can hardly, even do it. And then by the time we've had some time with them, they start doing it, and you can see they're getting off, and they're hitting before it or after it, and then they get right back on it. It's really fun to watch. 72, 60, 48. You decrease the time, the better they get at it. So, because it's easy to, the faster you clap, they want to go fast anyway, ADHD kids. But if you slow it down, that, or slapping their legs while they're sitting down. That's what you're going to do. You think I'm going to unplug this, don't you? Oh, I know. So that is something that's very effective to do every single day.
So did you say to start at 72?
Start at 72.
And then work your way slowly?
Work your way down.
And how long should these sessions
At
last?
least a minute.
Just
At
1
least a minute for
once
each
a day?
I would do it twice.
Twice a day?
Yeah. So here's the thing about timing. Your brain, unless you do something for at least 45 seconds, it doesn't get the message, hey, she's probably going to want to do that again. I should build better pathways. Let me go lay down some more neurons. That's what neuroplasticity is all about. If you do something for at least 45 seconds every day, you get better and better because your brain says, put more neurons down in that pathway. That's why we do the laser on the brain while we're doing this, because with the laser on, it stimulates more of a release of a substance called BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is something we make when we're doing a new task like this that stimulates your brain to make more nerves in that pathway. So we do what's called co-activation. We'll be doing the brain laser while they're doing either their eye exercises. I'm going to show you one of those in just a minute, but we have a large app, a large iPad, excuse me, that does eye movements, depending on what they need. So, for example, if when we're reading, we don't read like this. We read like this. It skips the little words, but still scans them in. But you pause at the big words, the most important words. All the rest of them are just automatically read. But kids who have eye problems may go this. Saccades, eye movements, stopping like this, going to the right is reading. So we'll have kids follow this little monster on the iPad screen, and then it comes back to the left, and then they follow it across like this. And we can set the number of saccades and all kinds of things, or diagonally, or whatever we need to do. But I'm going to teach one you can do at home for eye movement. And you'll tell them, imagine that you're looking down at this, and you're going to draw an 8, like this. Okay, you're going to start out here. You're going to come in like this, and get really close, so your eyes have to converge and focus. But you're only moving your eyes, not your head. Then, have them do that just by themselves, and then you're going to get they're going to do this to the timer as well, like this. They're going to have a hard time doing it at first, and they're going to come down here, and they're going to be all over the place. But you just guide them through it. Normally it's like this, do this, come out like this. This coming in, focusing, and being able to diverge and look distance is really important. The last one I'm going to show you is specifically for that. I'll show you what it looks like. You're going to go thumbs, thumbs, look at the wall, look at the thumbs, 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 look up to a distant wall, and then out. So you're going to go thumbs, thumbs, wall, thumb. Your eyes have to do a lot of stuff. And you're doing it to timing, timing, timing. Okay, who in the room gets startled with a loud noise? Anybody? Could I use you two as subjects? Excuse me. Would you mind coming up? I want to try something.
Not gonna make you cry.
Only with your permission, though.
I give my permission.
Okay. I hope I have enough room with this. Okay. So I'm going to have you turn facing that way. And Erica, I'm going to have you come to your left a little bit, and then you come back here. Back. Okay. Close your eyes and tilt your head back. She was worse. Erica, I wanted a bigger response.
Yeah, I
What did it feel like inside though?
Panic, anxiety.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've learned how to subdue that.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime there's a loud noise, the heart starts coming up. The heart rate.
I felt it inside, but since you told me it wasn't so big, yeah.
We had a discussion about this before.
Oh,
Okay.
no fair.
So have a seat. Okay. Is it okay if I do some more testing?
Now that
on
I
you?
know it's coming, yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to do that. So you can have a seat. I'm going to let you go sit down. I'm going to have you turn facing this way. I just want to see which side of the brain we would want to do that on. Okay, so would you mind taking your hat off for just a minute?
Oh, now that's even worse. Bad hair day. It's why I'm wearing the hat.
We don't care.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to observe.
And, yeah. Okay, put the hat.
And almost always, people who have a retained startle response will put their hands in their pockets or they'll go like this because they know they're going to go like this. Okay, thank you for being our volunteer. I'm just looking at some facial asymmetries. Do you mind if I point them out?
No.
Okay, turn
I've
facing
been
here.
crying all day, so
Okay.
it couldn't get any worse unless there's mascara under my.
So notice
No,
this
you're
laugh
good.
line's a little more prominent. This one's a little shallower. Raise your forehead up. There's a little bit more symmetry here, except right here, maybe a little. And it's not always like, wow, that everything. Hold your thumbs up like this and turn this way. I'm going to try to pull your thumbs down. I want you to hold back towards your head. Let me get underneath here like this.
So resist.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with being left-handed or right-handed. This one is stronger. I'm looking for tone in this, and this is quite a bit less on the left side, which is controlled by the right side of the brain. So,
And I'm left-handed.
and you're left-handed,
Which is
so yeah. Are you left-footed?
No, more. And I golf right.
So you have what's called mixed laterality. We want all of that to be on one side or the other. And not making judgment on which side it should be on, but it should be all on one side, because the brain doesn't work as well when it's mixed like that. So there's an exercise that you should be doing every day. And you can do this to the timer as well.
Cross crawl.
Cross crawl. You'd have to be really, really regular with that, like 3 times a day for at least a minute at a time.
Good
And
exercise.
it's worth it.
Yeah, it's good ab work.
Yeah, I'll do it, it's part of the hemispheric exam, and we look at mixed laterality like that. So,
But
do
then
you
that one,
mind
yeah.
if I, what's that?
Batting and everything's kind of different, depends on which, I don't know,
Which
I
sport you're gonna
learned
do.
or, yeah, exactly, it's just,
And sometimes parents see, you know, I want my kid to be right-handed, he keeps using his left hand. It's not a good thing. It will, whatever side it's going to be, either left or right, will develop on its own. Okay, do you mind if I do a little light and sound to see if I can make your
no, that's fine.
startle response go away?
Yeah, it's pretty bad,
Okay.
but there's emotional reasons behind that, like living in an abusive situation for several years, so that hasn't left after 10 years.
So you've been away from that for 10 years, and you're still
And I
having
still
these.
can have somebody come up behind me, my kid will think it's funny to just,
Mhm.
you know.
Put you over the edge.
But he knows that it's brought me to tears, so he's getting a lot better as he's,
Just knowing what I know about what side of the brain we need to do this. Now, it could be because you have mixed laterality, it could be the other side, but I'm going to do what works most of the time. Turn sideways to me. And I'm just going to shine this light in your eye, in your left eye. I'm shooting for the right side of the brain, and this part of the visual field goes there. So I want you to tell me if you start to feel anxious or nauseous, or if you feel like that starts to go down a little bit.
yeah, I started to feel like a
Not-
pit.
not numb?
Yeah,
Okay.
or just from that,
So how about when I do it this far away? Is that a little better?
a little better.
Okay. Is that okay? So we're just going to do about 10 times.
So peripheral. is what you're-
Well, it depends on a lot of things. I wouldn't try this at home.
Have his ass.
Okay, one more time. And now, turn facing that way. Can't get a loud clap. I want you to tell me, compared to the first time, now, you probably figured something was coming, but that inner feeling that you got, did that go down at all?
Yeah, that time it didn't, I didn't feel a knee
Right.
jerk in my
Typically, if
gut.
somebody has a jerk like that, they'll do it every time. You know, so that should help that, take that edge off of that. So that's actually a retain, when I say retain. It could be, if somebody has a retained primitive reflex, I mean, you can have people that never went away, Or you could have something like what happened to you, severe emotional trauma, or a head trauma, and it comes back. Some people, if they have a re-emergence of the rooting reflex, they'll go nonverbal after a head injury. They'll think, oh, they have brain damage. No, they just have a primitive reflex that came up. Or the one on their feet, and then they can't walk. Because if the one on the feet comes back, when you stroke a baby's foot, the toes go up. They're supposed to go like this so we can walk. So every time I put my foot and my toes go up, I can't walk. So some people may lose their ability to walk after a brain injury, but it's just the primitive reflex came back. It's not brain damage. Or the rooting reflex comes back and now they can't talk.
Suckling, rooting reflex.
Yeah. You'll, if you stroke the cheek, you have to do it, out on the lips, and you'll see a little twitch. Really bad retained primitive reflex. You can touch, like with a tongue depressor, just touch the little kid's mouth like this, and they'll go. They'll actually try to latch on. That is, and here's why these are important. Primitive reflexes inhibit proper, remember when I was talking about networks and hubs? It inhibits proper network and hub connections. So you have to go back and get rid of those primitive reflexes in order for the primitive brain to develop normally. The fight or flight comes from the same part of the brain that primitive reflex, the Moreau, the startle response is stored in. I mean, that's where it fires. It's right next door to the fight or flight. So you're in constant stimulation of fight or flight, and it only takes that much, man.
Push.
And I think this has a lot to do with PTSD. Guys come home from war, and a loud noise sends them under the car, or ducking for cover. Not just me, there are a lot of people who think that this is because their primitive reflexes got reactivated. So and there's a way of making them go away, all of them. And every person who comes in, even if they just come in for a brain map, and once they start doing any care, they have to do a primitive reflex exam, because we have to make sure that all of those things are put to rest. You can't get the top part of the brain to start regulating itself if something in the primitive brain is, and I know in every language, everyone would know what this means. Neener, 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 right? No matter what country you're in, everybody would get it. It's like, you thought, but what reality is, I'm in charge. I, the hyper-startle response, am in charge. It might show up like this. There's one that actually is supposed to go away when the Moreau comes out, and it's supposed to go away before birth, and it's the fear paralysis. Kids who have that, or people, these are kids that scream bloody murder if you just ask them to do something different. Or freeze. They freeze, they're frozen, they can't act, they're screaming, they're throwing a big temper tantrum, you have no idea what this is about. All we're doing is walking down the hall. These kids have a fear paralysis response that's retained. There's a way of getting rid of that so that is not the rest of their life. Remember, it goes back to, we help people get their true self back. We help people get their true self back. Those things are not part of their personality. They're not part of them. The anxiety is not part of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I hope that gives you some long-standing relief.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to show you an exercise, and you may want to stay up here for a second, sorry. I just thought I'm going to show you that. Oh, she's going to unplug me. It's called the starfish. And so you'll do this at home. And hello, camera gal. So you're going to start in the fetal position. Right leg over right leg, or left leg, right arm over left. You're going to go down like this, as far down as you can, and then you're going to take a deep breath. You're going to take a deep breath. The key is your head has to go as far back as you can go. You're taking your body into the position that a baby goes into when they get started. But you're doing it from the higher part of your brain because it needs to dominate over this startle response. And you're going to do that and hold each position 5 to 7 seconds. And you're going to switch arms and legs. So the first time you go right over right, then left over left, fetal position. And we're going to do that like 7 times, hold for 5 to 7 seconds each time. You're going to do that 3 times a day. That will help your higher brain dominate over that primitive reflex.
That startle response.
The startle
It's called
response.
the startle, not the
It's called the
starfish.
Moro, M-O-R-O.
It's not starfish, it's startle, right?
Yeah, starfish to get rid of the startle. Yes, starfish.
Okay.
Okay?
So we're gonna try that or just practice it at home?
You can practice it at home, do it every day. Anybody who has one. But really people, really smart people that I like to learn from figured out ways of getting rid of them with light and sound and stimulating the parts of the brain that way. Sometimes it's a combination of light and sound, sometimes just sound that does it for somebody, sometimes it's like a certain tuning, like with a tuning app, find the right frequency that makes it go away. Difficult cases, you have to experiment and find out what it is because everybody's a little bit different. I want to open it up to any questions. I already did the metronome, somehow that's what I got in here. Oh yeah. Core strength development, and I already told you floppy muscles, floppy brain, floppy tongue. Core strength, I'll just mention a couple of things on that. I do, in the hemispheric exam, I'll have people do a bridge, you know, they're on the floor, feet are down, see if they can hold that for a minute. If they start to wobble, I know we can't go beyond that. But then, if they do well on that, I'll have them lift one leg off. So if the left leg is down, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. If somebody has a right brain weakness, they're going to be wobbly. And then the right leg down, they're really strong. And then I have a whole set of different colored glasses. There are different colors, frequencies of glasses that tend to speed up the left side or the right side of the brain. So we go through individually which color makes it so you can balance with that leg down, or which color makes it so you can skip, or which color makes it you can walk without tremors, or whatever it is, balance on just on your left foot, you know, with your left foot down. So we find out what that color is, and then we supply those people, those kids, adults, kids. I have a video of a woman getting up out of her chair. She was getting up like this. I have a video of her jogging down the hall with rose-colored glasses on. That's the meaning to, hey, you're looking through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Okay, so core, you can't develop the brain properly if you don't develop the core and you don't get rid of primitive reflexes. You can't get past that. Because the primitive reflexes, remember, they're going to sabotage proper brain development just by their presence. Kids who have a retained rooting reflex can stutter because it affects their speech. Get rid of that. Sometimes we need to do a little neurofeedback to retrain the brain. It's right here. So I want to open it up to any questions. Were you raising your?
No.
Oh, okay. So yes, Eric.
So my daughter, she had a bit of a speech delay, and then she's 4 now, and she speaks. What she speaks perfectly. I can understand her. But then she'll be like, "Mommy, I want juice," and she'll start telling me a story and just kind of start to gibber in between. I don't know if that has anything to do with a weakness or if it's just a delay.
And it may, and the first thing I would do is check primitive reflexes. That's what I would do. I know her daughter. She is in really big trouble. Not the daughter, you.
Yes. Just one of the many.
If you show them a picture, they'll know why. Because
Yeah.
she's got everything under control, and she's a fashionista.
Oh, yeah.
Very particular.
Yeah.
Fashionistas are more right brain, you know?
She used Christmas
Like people
ornaments.
who care about their
here.
clothes, not left brain.
No, no, definitely.
Um,
Okay, we'll check that.
Yes, and I was going to tell you something else. I'll think of it. Anybody else? Question? Yes, ma'am.
Does any of this retraining the brain have anything to do with occupational therapy? Is there a correlation somehow? Because I know in OT, they talk a lot about proprioceptive input, vestibular input, to read, what do they call it, organizing the sensory system, so to speak?
Yeah.
Any
Mm-hmm. And
correlation there?
we accelerate that here with lasers.
Okay.
The lasers that I have are programmable anywhere between 1 pulse per second and 100,000 pulses per second. So if we want to activate the cerebellum, we want to go at about 8 to 12 pulses per second, because that's the vibration rate, that's the pulse rate of the cerebellum. If we want to activate right prefrontal cortex, that's a little bit different, but sometimes we'll do 2 at the same time, because you can either cancel out some brain waves that are too much or activate some that aren't enough. So, and then we do co-activating things, but they're looking at some of the same things. They're trying to activate different pathways
Okay.
or different hubs and networks. It's a little bit more accelerated
Through here.
through the laser stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
What is,
Ma'am.
what is the cost for the kids to get remapped?
The brain map, we have a really good way of introducing people to what we do. And the brain map itself is usually over $200. We do the brain map and we do 2 sessions of neurofeedback to show you how it works for $195.
And that
It's kind of an
usually
introduction.
requires more to get their primitive reflexes complete.
Primitive reflexes is a separate
It's a separate thing.
exam. Yeah, we're actually doing a drawing tonight for some of those.
Because yes, with the post-traumatic stress syndrome and the fight or flight, it's been like a 4-year thing where the digestion's just shot.
Right.
I'm sure it's gonna take more than 2 treatments. I think they recommended APN or something.
Yeah, and the neurofeedback is a little bit different. You know, industry standard on that is, you know, you're doing 2 sessions a week for several months to retrain the brain to regulate itself. So we go through primitive reflexes, make sure to check all the boxes. Can't have those. You cannot have primitive reflexes and have proper top-down regulation. Then we need to make sure, okay, we don't have a really severe weakness on the right side as opposed to the left, and we need to give exercises to stimulate that side of the brain. We need to get them in the right colored glasses that they wear for at least an hour a day so that that's actually speeding up that right side or the left side. Some people need yellow glasses for yellow, red, rose, pink for the left side of the brain. But we're making sure that all the boxes are checked and this person has the best chance of, you know, getting their, getting their brain functioning rather than artificially through a drug. So the drug manufacturers, I talked about those little dimmer switches, you know, you have the ability to get more activity or less activity. The drug companies, or excuse me, drugs are geared to turn something down. So if somebody has a tic, if I have a tic where I go like this, that's a normal motion, right? If I got something underneath my eye, but I should be able to stop it. Or if, that's a normal motion, blinking and shrugging my shoulders. The area, the controls, blinking and shrugging my shoulder, has too much activity in it, and it keeps firing, and I can't turn it off. That's a tic. So the drugs are geared to turn down that power. Unfortunately, it makes us stupid, it makes us foggy, and makes us lethargic because it slows everything else down too. But that's what drugs do. They're not geared, except, you know, ADHD, you know, they're geared to ramp somebody up.
So to heal a child, we're talking it's a 4 to 6 month protocol, and the package is
Depending on what they have going on.
severe PTSD and digestive issues from
Yeah.
the whole fight, flight.
So there's a lot going on. So that would be a decision to be made after examine. You know, maybe we can get rid of the primitive reflexes pretty quick. But normally, somebody has all of it. These kids have a either really right brain weakness if they're ADHD or autistic. They may be nonverbal. It just depends on what's going on. Each degree of that requires longer treatment most of the time. Yes, ma'am.
I have a daughter with dyslexia and dysgraphia. Could you speak to that for a little bit?
Dyslexia?
And dysgraphia.
Yes. That is a left brain weakness. So reading, verbal are not very good. Some primitive reflexes actually cause that to be worse. One of them, if you can imagine somebody in this room might have it, there's a primitive reflex in the lower back called the spinal gallant. If that's retained, it causes chronic constipation, bladder insufficiency, or can't stand somebody's close. Can't stand anything touching my skin because it's hypersensitive back there. So dyslexia, that is, you'd be targeting the left side of the brain to catch up with the right. People who have left brain weakness will have super strength. I would ask kids, what's your superhuman property? So what is she good at? What is she really good at?
Art.
Yeah, but she has a hard time reading. Has she been tested for eye
It's
movement?
the processing. It comes in and it doesn't come
Okay.
out. She can comprehend is fine. It just, it is dyslexia. It's been diagnosed. It's just.
So dyslexia is a left brain
Mhm.
weakness?
Yes, I focused on ADHD, but dyslexia is the opposite. She has a left brain. Her left brain is going slower than right. Now, we all come to Earth with a little bit more of a preponderance of probability of being a little bit stronger on our left than our right. Boys are more right brain in general. I mean, I could say, boys are taller, but there's some women in here probably taller than some of the boys in here, but in general, boys have more of a tendency for right brain. That's big muscle control. Girls a little bit more left. So boys are more susceptible to some kind of trauma, to like the mom has trauma in the womb and the child is in the womb. Those types of things can push that boy over the edge, and now his right brain's not functioning properly from birth. And now the left brain kicks in more, and now we have the left brain strong. So girls are more left brain, so if something happened, and there's no way, you can't blame yourself. You just can't. It can be anything. And now, for some reason, the left brain is oscillating slower than the right brain. So that is still hemispheric exam, but the things that you described can also be some of them can be from a primitive reflex, retained primitive reflex. And that's a simple test. That's, a half hour. Come in, I do a hemispheric and primitive reflex exam in a half an hour, and you can get a lot of information about what's going on with me or my child. Yes, sir.
Just a question on autism. It seems that, within every decade, the percentages are going way up. Do we know why?
I didn't hear part of that question, sorry.
Autism is going up through
It
decades.
seems every decade there's a much higher percentage of autistic children. Do we know why?
There's a lot of speculation.
Vaccine.
Some people say vaccines cause them. I don't think vaccines cause them because we'd all have autism. But I'm going to have to explain pruning and trimming, okay? How many mothers have seen their child go from, my child used to say 20 words, now they only say 5? Regression, Like they can do some skill and all of a sudden they can't. There are different milestones where they go through regression, and what that is, when we're born, we only have connections inside of each lobe. The baby doesn't need to correlate vision, movement, and hearing because they're not moving and they're just kind of eating and sleeping and pooping and that kind of stuff. So as the baby's brain develops and we start to get cross connections and then front to back and this kind of connections, then the brain has a system, it's called the microglial system, that activates and it says, I gotta kill you, I gotta kill you, I gotta kill you, and gobble you up. Because I don't need you anymore. Sorry, we're breaking up. And it destroys part of the brain. And if the child is used to activating these pathways in order to do this movement or speak or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they're not there, and I have to take the long route to do it, now they look like they actually went downhill. Now I can't talk very well. I can only say 5 words instead of 20. Or I can't, maybe I stopped walking as well as I was. So, there are adjuvants in vaccines that are supposed to activate the immune system more. If that child is and it activates the microglial system, those things in vaccines activate your immune system, your microglial system. Some kids it doesn't affect them. But if the child is already going through pruning and trimming and the microglial system is already activated, all of a sudden, Bruce Banner turns into Hulk. What does Hulk do? I'm going to kill, I'm going to kill, I'm going to kill, and it kills too many. There is actually research that shows the vaccines can ramp up the microglial system. Now, I have some research I can show you on that.
So it is likely that there's just a mismatch between that vaccine and that child, and that could have
Or timing, or they're already set up, they're already on the edge,
Right.
they're already on the edge. That's why it's not every child that responds the
Exactly.
same way.
Yeah.
And more kids are autistic or ADHD by this right and left brain hemispheric difference. That can be caused by trauma, that can be caused by a lot of different things. Caused by giving the kid a tablet to babysit him when he's really young, and the right side of the brain's supposed to be online, but the left side comes online.
The left side sees it
Now you got a right weak brain.
and wants it, yeah.
Mhm. Now you have asymmetry of skills,
Could be a lot of
unevenness of
reasons,
skills
though.
too. You got this side, I'm a 7th grader, this side, I'm a 10th grader.
So it could be a lot of.
Or
it's
I'm
just
a
technology.
4th grader and I'm a 10th grader here.
Yeah. It could be
in
the
skill.
technology has caused it more than.
Technology is really hard on,
Uh-huh.
that's part of the reason we have all this stuff.
Putting your kid in front of the TV as a babysitter just wasn't that good of an idea.
It's so easy though. You just want 30 seconds to go into the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right, Mom? Mommy! My heavens, it was only gone 30 seconds. Yeah, I know. Father of 8, remember?
Just switch gears a little bit. I work with a lot of children who have disabilities, and they utilize state funds for stuff like this. Do you accept, have you heard of the Family Direct Funds?
Thanks for coming.
Self-direct funds for adults with disabilities? Do you accept those types of funds where they come through a fiscal employer
We're not
agent?
set up
Okay.
for any of that. There are codes, there are insurance codes. I'm not opposed to looking into stuff because remember, we just want to make a difference in this community. So however we can do
Check
that.
into it, because a lot of families would be interested in having brain maps for kids who
I
have
know.
these disabilities. And it's a third-party check, it comes from a fiscal employer agent, they submit it,
Right.
fund gets approved, check gets cut, they bring it to you.
Yeah. So we want to help as many people as we can. I'm speaking at St. Al's social workers next on the 10th. And part of that talk is going to be showing them what specific brainwaves different drugs tweak up or down. And I'm going to pose the question, should people prescribing psychotropic drugs have a brain map before they prescribe a drug? because you may be prescribing a drug that's going to cause them to be suicidal or homicidal. How much did you hear that on TV? That was nice music playing. If you have homicidal or suicidal
Yeah.
thoughts, go to the guy who prescribed it to you to give you a different one. That's how that works. So open to, discovering what's entailed in that.
I know a lot of families who would do it.
Yeah. And it's sad that they have to not do it because they can't afford something. Unfortunately, my staff, right, Lynn, they like to get paid. They have bills too. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I have a teenager who.
I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding.
We're
As do I
in
still.
the driving training process.
Okay.
And I've noticed she has a difficult time making decisions.
Decision.
Decide,
Okay.
like you come to the
I don't know what to do.
and just,
Yes.
I can't, there's too many inputs and changing lanes it's terrifying. And so what I'm wondering if there's
It could be
something going on.
fear paralysis. It could be. Or it could be a visual processing problem. Verbal or visual. I'll tell you a little experience we had. There's this woman who came to me. She was actually having painful scars from endometriosis surgery, and the lasers are really good for normalizing tissue, and so she came to me for that. But I noticed when I was talking to her, I'd ask her a question, and there was this uncomfortable pause. 2 or 3 seconds, I would ask her a question, and then she would respond. And after a little while of that, I said, you should probably do a brain map, because she said, I know my husband thinks I'm ignoring him. I don't think anything's wrong. So she started neurofeedback. I get this email from her. She said, I've seen the movie Cars probably 100 times. I didn't know there was background dialogue going on, and I can hear it now.
Oh.
So it's verbal processing. Here's the thing. They're like speedometer needles as a measurement. 0, it's okay, okay. 10 is it's really, really bad. If both of those needles get above a 5, and they have verbal and visual processing, we have 5 senses. Only 2 of them are appropriate when we're engaging with someone. Seeing and hearing. We usually don't go up and feel them. We usually don't go taste them. We don't go smell them. So that's our interface with the world. So if that's slow, these kids get misdiagnosed as oppositional defiant. Johnny, I told you 50 times in the last 2 days, don't drop your coat on the floor. This is really simple. I've asked you. Do you remember I asked you? They can't. They can't store that in that short-term or working memory to remember, Mom told me that 50 times, or just like 10 minutes ago. So it's a verbal and visual processing problem, not an oppositional defiant problem. They're not able to do it. I had some friends of mine, I've known her for probably 20 years, and I get this instant message from the dad. He's saying, we went through a pretty traumatic thing. My wife almost died. She was in the hospital. She had an aortic aneurysm. All of a sudden, my high schooler is just really, really angry all the time. I mean, he's just angry outbursts. So I said, get him in, let's do the brain map. Sure enough, the brain map, we talk in probabilities. You don't say you are this or you have this, but it talks about probabilities. Anger, control issues. The way the power in the brain, it's like that dimmer switch. Somebody turned that angry rheostat way up, and it's stuck. And he can't turn it off, so he feels angry all the time. And he turned to his mom and said, I told you. Because that's what I don't know why I'm angry. I don't know why. I just am. People, if beta waves between 50 and 20 cycles per second goes up, the person's angry and controlling. Just the way it is. Because that dimmer switch gets turned up, and you can't turn it off. Others are things like I can't shut my brain off. I try to go to sleep and it just keeps going. I can't go to sleep. That's a different problem. Yes, ma'am.
Can this help with concussions?
Oh, yes. We actually see a very stereotypical pattern in concussion, and that is the power of all the 4 different brainwaves shifts to one side or the other. So there's one part of the map that's called asymmetry, and delta is more powerful on the left, theta more powerful on the left, alpha and beta, everything shifted to the left. That is a picture of concussion. Now, if it shifts to the right, everything's more powerful on the right, it's a concussion with anxiety.
That's my daughter right
If
now.
it shifts to the left, it's concussion with depression. Because alpha and beta are supposed to have more power on one side to the other. Why? Right brain, left brain. Different things are processed on the right side compared to the left. The left is more analytical and needs more beta, which comes from the cortex. The right is more big picture, music, her daughter, that needs more alpha. If beta shifts over to the right side, that person's anxiety needle is ready to blow. And all it takes is a little drop and over the edge. Now, having said that, could be a primitive reflex reappearance, like a startle response. Just to get startled really easily. Go up behind her one time and go,
Okay,
and see if she jumps.
yeah.
That's a Moreau.
Yeah, she's a competitive cheerleader and had a bunch of concussions. And this last one,
I have 3 daughters who did that.
oh yeah? Yeah.
Competitive flipping. My youngest daughter was the flyer. Yeah.
Yeah, mine's the base and won't let her flyer fall and will get hit in the head before
Oh,
they
yeah.
fall.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so this last time, it's been really messing with her, so we're seeing like a bunch of specialists with St. Luke's and her anxiety, like she's peeing constantly because it's like, she's like,
Oh yeah, everything's ramped up.
yeah.
I think I cursed all of my kids because every time I would change them or dress them, since they were infants, I would go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's actually really good for them. I just figured this is good, so I'm going to do it. So they all got, every single one of my 5 daughters been cheerleaders. My fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, a brain map would be really good to get some answers
Yeah.
for her.
And then my son is dyslexic and ADHD and has a tick with anxiety.
How many tics does he have?
It's actually gotten better. There was one point where he was like his shoulder and his face and like his mouth. And now it's
Yeah.
pretty much, if he gets really stressed, he'll blink and sometimes open his mouth. But it's not
Yeah, and
really
sometimes they
as
can
it was.
get conscious control or do something different, I should say,
Yeah.
that then the tick kind of goes down, or like when they're asleep. Some ticks go away, but certainly not all of them.
Yeah.
But again, it's that little switch is just too much power, and so it keeps doing it. Sometimes it can be a cough. I heard of somebody who coughed or sneezed. It can be a sneeze, it can be a cough. Somebody sneezed like 2,500 times a day until they got that part switched down. It's kind of sad.
I assume that this type of therapy isn't covered by insurance.
No, some of them do, and right now the BCIA, where I got my certification, they're actually in talks with the AMA to actually get our own codes, because all of it's been lumped into biofeedback, but this is neurofeedback, so it's different. So really soon, those are going to be separate. And why, people ask me, why don't hospitals do it? Why don't they do this? Neurofeedback is difficult it's not set up where you could do a double-blind study, because somebody's going to know you're not really doing it. And it's considered, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up if anybody has any more questions. But somebody's going to know that you're not really doing it, and it would be considered withholding care. And so the studies are done with outcome studies. They test a bunch of people who have this disorder, and then they say, here's the probability that it gets better. This gets most likely to be beneficial. And medicine is set up more for, getting a sugar pill instead of the pill, and nobody knows who got what. And it doesn't work with neurofeedback. So it's mostly individual practitioners who do it. And it's not easy, Lynn, is it? No, you can't just okay, we're just gonna hook this machine up and we're gonna turn it on. It's not that simple. So I have and I'm sorry I didn't even introduce you, Lynn Freiberg-House. She's one of our rock stars doing the neurofeedback. Doing a neurofeedback session or setting one up would be like just doing the same thing, but sometimes the connections aren't right, and you have to troubleshoot, and then that gets a bit, but the system shows when they're not connected right, and then you have to jump through the hoops. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to hang out for as long as anyone wants to ask questions. I really want to thank you for coming. It's been fun, and hope you learned something that might help somebody in your life, in your circle. That's our focus. I like this quote right here because it kind of speaks to what we're about. The tragedy of life is not death, but what we let die inside of us while we live. If you put that in the context of all of these things in the brain are simply something's happening too much or too little, and we have this symptom. So changing that changes the trajectory of that person and the people around them.